right, 4 essential steps to making sure your practice doesn't tank when you reopen. Now, we've got this designed so that I'm going to do one of these every week for the next 4 weeks. And today's step 1 is about getting on top of your internal game. Now, if I could just set the scene for you, of the 4 presentations, in many ways, this is the most important, because what this does is it sets the foundation for everything else. If I can use a house building analogy, if you've got poor foundations for your house, well, obviously the house is not going to survive. Now, you may be thinking, well, Angus, I'm here and I want lots of tactical advice. That's more going to be in the later weeks, and maybe those topics will appear to be more sexy. But the fact is, this one's actually more important. If you get your foundations right, everything else will go well from that. Press record, that's good. So let's have a look. Purpose. Discover 4 ways crisis affects you and how you communicate with others. Explore the technique used by a US general to help you lead with confidence, and experience how revisiting your practice vision can reduce stress and increase clarity, because that's what we all want, isn't it? So what I want you to do, I'm hoping that you've taken my advice, you've shut the door, you turned off all distractions. I want you to write down somewhere, whether it's a pen and a bit of paper or whatever, or maybe you can put your phone into flight mode and still type your notes. I want you to write down, take action now. And when you've done that, can you please just put something in the chat for me to tell me that you've actually done that? I'll have that sitting there for a second. Now, the reason I say this, thank you so much, the reason I say this is not for me, but for you. I'm going to give you a whole bunch of information in this presentation, and I want you to be, for people my generation and older, you might remember there was a show called My Favourite Martian, and they had antenna, like the Martians. And I want your antenna to be sitting here during this presentation going, what is one thing from this presentation from Angus that I can take action on? Because otherwise, honestly, we might as well be sitting here watching Netflix. I mean, the whole idea is that we learn, and information's good, but applied information is much better. So be looking out for taking action now. All right, the agenda. I'll do a little bit of an introduction, a little bit of background for me. I'm aware, particularly for some of the Kiwis, perhaps you've not come across me before. Just be aware, I started school in New Zealand, in Palmerston North, many years ago. We'll look at the psychology of crisis. We'll look at strategies for surviving and thriving, and then revisiting your passions and vision, and then we'll have time for Q&A at the end, when, if he's a good boy, I'll let Trevor back on the screen on video with me. So what I'm going to do is start a poll, and I'm just going to ask you, it should pop up on the screen. Here we are, launch the poll. And if you wouldn't mind just checking the box which says what your role is. If you do that, just making sure I'm not getting any messages from, okay, this is very interesting. Look, I know it's a small thing for you to do, but it's so helpful for me. And I'll give you the results of the poll. I can see that about 3/4 of you have voted. Come on, keep voting, keep voting. Principal, associate, dentist. We do have others. I noticed I've got 3 that call themselves other. For you other guys, would you mind typing into the chat window what your other is? Thank you for that, everyone. I'm just waiting for the results. So I've got 80% voted. I'll take that. Okay, we've got someone who's an owner, but maybe not a dentist. That's good for you. It's a business I wouldn't mind investing in as well. Come on, you others. There's 2 others in there who've said they're other, but I just want to know what that is. All right, I'll give you all. The poll's been going for 1 minute. Okay, that's good. Thank you so much. And by the way, I think I'm right in saying you could, good on you, Yvonne. I'm right in saying that you could have entered more than one thing here if you were there with the team. Okay, I'll take 87% vote. That's terrific. So I can tell you that 60% of you are principal dentists, 11% associates, 16% practice managers, 5% DAs, 3% reception admin staff, and then the others, you heard what that was. All right, thank you for that. Polling is closed. The other thing I'm going to get you to do then, if you wouldn't mind, and particularly for the Kiwis, but for everyone, I know what the situation is in Australia, but I'm not sure what it is in New Zealand. So in Australia, in my mind, you're either open or you're closed, your practice. And if you're open, I know that means you can only do emergencies. So if you wouldn't mind just typing in, are you open or are you closed? For the Kiwis, you might want to let me know what the situation is there. In Australia, we're at level 3 restrictions, which means you can be open as a dental practice, but only for emergencies. Let's see what everyone's doing there. Okay, open, closed, open. Level 4 national lockdown. We're closed. Most are closed. I assume that's from New Zealand. Okay, closed but open for emergencies. That's good. Level 4. Now, Yvonne and others and Rosalind, I just want to check. I assume you guys are in New Zealand. So if that is the case, it means that you, yes, okay, that's great. All right, thank you for that. Okay, so in fact, it's in a sense, it's a little bit tougher in NZ than it is in Australia. All right, let's keep moving on. So a little bit about me. These are the photos I put up to help you, remind you that I'm a real person. I'm not an alien. That's my wife and my kids, my daughter-in-law and my granddaughter. That's the same granddaughter there. Look, honestly, I know you're thinking, how can a face this young be a grandparent? Believe me, I've asked myself that question there. I would willingly spend the rest of the presentation talking about my granddaughter, but that doesn't seem like good form. So I'm just wondering, is anybody not like tomato? You know, if you don't like tomato, I don't know if this video is going to work. Let's give it a go. This was my granddaughter Willow trying tomato for the first time. It says cannot play media. Let's see if it works. Yeah, all right, bummer. Okay, here's my promise. We're going to do one of these every week, and I promise that by next week I'll get the tomato video going. I assure you it's pretty cool. All right, so for me, I've got a master's degree in marketing. I've worked with doctors, dentists, vets for more than 10 years, pretty much exclusively with dentists for the last 5 years, international speaker. I've actually got an appointment to come and speak in New Zealand later in this year. That one has been, the arrangements are a bit unclear about that for fairly obvious reasons. A small issue of aeroplanes not flying, but I'm looking forward to that. #1 Amazon best-selling author, winner of the Australian Dental Industry Association's 2020 Marketing Awards. And you'll notice on my slide here, it says finalist. We only found out on Thursday. It was very exciting. It's so recent we haven't even got the artwork done. Quoted on ABC, Fox and CBS. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense. In terms of my background, the story of the Ds. I was a drummer. That was my first occupation out of high school, and believe me, that's a tough way to make a living. Then I became a diplomat. I served the Australian government overseas for 7 years. That was my next D. I was a developer. I had a property developing business in Adelaide. That was one of our first developments there. And then if you allow a little bit of poetic license, I became a drug pusher. Not the illegal type, but the legal type. I worked in the pharmaceutical industry. And it was during that time I was studying digital marketing, and I'd go and see the clients, and then we would inevitably end up speaking about how they'd be marketing their business. And it just got me to thinking, well, maybe I could be a marketer. And after studying, you know, looking around the place pretty extensively, I realised that dentistry was the place for me. So that was my series of the Ds. Now, I've got two sides to my business. There's the Angus Pryor side and the local search for dentists side. In all things, we're about helping dentists to win in business and life. And you'll see that in this presentation, there are elements of this that are about business and there are elements of this that are about life, because there's no point winning in one and losing in the other. On the Angus Pryor side of the business, I run masterminds, I do consulting and training like this. And then Local Search for Dentists is my agency. We do local search, SEO, AdWords, websites. I'm just trying to give you a sense of what normal life is like for me. So that's enough about me and my background. Let's talk about the background. Now, I've got another poll here. Hopefully, it's going to let me do these. That's good. That's very good. Would you mind, please? I've got 2 questions for you because I want to know what you feel is going to happen once you reopen. If you'd be kind enough to put your votes in there. There's 2 questions. Once you reopen, what are your expectations about initial patient numbers? You know, it'll be slow, we'll have to chase patients, our phones will be steady but not overwhelmed, we'll be overwhelmed with calls. And then 2, once we reopen, how long do you think it'll take you to return to where you were before the change? Is it first month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever? This is great. I can tell you, can I just say, this is a lot of fun doing this. I really love seeing the answers come in. I appreciate the participation, everyone. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's good. And Beth King doesn't like tomatoes. Beth, make sure you join me next week at this time. I'll show you my my granddaughter's experience with tomatoes. All right, come on, guys. We can get up to 87% we got to last time. Keep voting. We're at 71%. So I'll remind you what the first question was. How interesting. Okay, so the first question was, come on, you recalcitrants. Once you reopen, what are your expectations about initial patient numbers? Be slow, steady, or will you be overwhelmed? And then the second part is, yep, okay, absolutely. Thank you for the comments. And then the second part is, how quickly will you return to normal? All right, so look, we've got pretty close, 76%. I'll take that. I don't want to keep you waiting. So I can tell you that 1/3 of you think that it will start slow. We'll have to chase patients. 43% of you think that our phones will be steady but not overwhelmed. And 21% say you'll be overwhelmed with calls. And that is pretty obviously dependent on where you're living. Then the next part is really interesting. Once you reopen, how long do you think it'll take you to return to where you were before the change? 14% of you say after the first month we'll be back at normal. I dare say that's the same group who said they thought they'd be overwhelmed. 28% said after 3 months we'll be back at normal. 31% said after 6 months. 16% said after 12 months we'll be back at normal. And 12% said we will not return to normal without doing something different. So it's good that you can join in this, because over the next few weeks I'm going to show you how to do stuff that's different. All right, a unique opportunity. John F. Kennedy. When written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of 2 characters. One represents danger and the other represents opportunity. Ryan Reynolds. Any kind of crisis can be good. It wakes you up. And what I want to say to you, for every single person who's on this call, it is inevitable during this time that some businesses are going to go down and some businesses are going to go up. I honestly believe this is going to be one of these sort of BC, AC, you know, before and after COVID kind of events. And my strong desire for you, because you're on this call, is that you be one of the business that goes up as a result of this. Now, here's some of the businesses that were formed during a time of recession or depression. Perhaps you've heard of some of these businesses. It's incredible, these household names that were formed during tough times. And the question that we keep asking ourselves in our office is, what does this situation make possible? And it's a question for you to be asking yourself at this time. Okay, yes, we know there are a lot of things that are tough during this time. Your income's either been completely cut off or severely curtailed. But what does this situation make possible for you? And I'm going to spend more time on that later on. All right, that's a bit of an intro, some background. Let's have a look at the psychology of crisis. So what is a crisis? Look, according to Lifeline, a crisis is someone's reaction to an event or experience in their life they find hard to cope with. People may experience crisis as a result of many events. This is important. One person can be extremely affected by an event, while someone else experiencing the same event might experience little or no negative effects. And so for some of you on this, you're sitting going, this is a crisis. And for some of you on this, you're going, this is an opportunity. Now, I'm not here to sort of tell you which way you should be going, but I just want to open your eyes more to the opportunity side. Now, I think this is my last poll. I will ask you some more stuff, but let's be real here, guys. And I want to understand. I'm going to do that. So this is what I'm asking, and what you're about to type in before I ask this question, your responses are completely anonymous, okay? But I do want to be real with you. So what I'm asking you to do is I've launched the poll, and I don't see your names, but I'm going to ask you to describe your current stress levels. Are you about the same as normal? You're a bit better, a lot better? Are you a bit worse? Are you a lot worse? Let's see how people are reacting to this, because I thought that response from, pardon me, that response from Lifeline was really interesting. That two people can respond to the exact same circumstances in a very different way. Now, for some of us, I can tell you I'm looking at the results right here, and thank you for voting, everyone. Obviously, this question's a bit easier than the last one. Some of you have said you're a lot better than usual, and I can only assume that perhaps you had a pretty stressful life. Being a dentist or working in a practice and more time with family is really helping. I've got a bunch of you saying you're a bit worse than usual, and I 100% get that. And there's even a few of you that's saying you're a lot worse than usual. And I just want to say I respect the position that you've got, but I think it's really important for us to understand where we're at. So thank you for sharing that. Actually, quite a full spectrum, which is pretty consistent with the results from Lifeline. So helping dentists win in business and life. You know, I made this video pretty recently, and I'm going to repeat this message now. Someone needs to hear this today. Are you okay? And I shared that video, and this is a response that I got. So when you posted, are you okay? In all seriousness, I'm not. I had a little breakdown from everything, and my partner even said, just sell the damn thing or shut it down because it isn't worth it. And so right now, I'm asking you, are you okay? Because I just want you to know that you're important, and you're important to me. And if you recognise just from the last minute or two, you're going, actually, I'm not okay, then I'm asking you to reach out to someone. Reach out to Lifeline, make an appointment with a doctor, call a friend, whatever the case is, because you're important. All right. So managing your health. One of the things that I would say has made a huge difference to me personally, because my goal is not just to depress you, but I want to be real with you, but I want to give you some resources to help, is your morning routine. Now, if you've not read this book, amazing book by a guy called Hal Elrod, The 6 Habits That Would Transform Your Life Before 8 a.m. Now, I would say this has changed my life in the last 18 months. Even if you don't get the book and you don't want to read it, I'm going to show you what the habits are. So basically what he did in this book is he figured out, one, that by installing some habits in your morning routine, you can change your trajectory for the rest of the day. And he looked at the habits that the most successful people on the planet use. And you can see there's gratitude, affirmations, visualization, journaling, reading, exercise. I mean, Richard Branson attributes part of his success to exercise. Sports people, very strong on visualization, see themselves kicking the goal before they do it. Affirmations, I choose to be my best self and show up and be present today. And gratitude. Here's an interesting thing about gratitude. It is physiologically impossible. It's impossible to be grateful and unhappy at the same time. And in the midst of these situations, sometimes we feel like, well, what have I got to be grateful for? But I force myself many days before I get out of bed to say, what am I grateful for? And I say, I'm so grateful I had a bed to sleep in, that I wasn't sleeping under a bridge. I'm so grateful that I've had food in the last 24 hours, and so on and so on. So that was something I'd strongly recommend. The other thing, very practical, there's an old proverb that says a man or woman is what he thinks about all day long. And I would say to you at this time, be very, very careful what you watch or listen to. I put the 7 News there, but it could have been any of them. Let's just, let's call a spade an effing shovel here. If you are the boss of Channel 7 or whatever the stations are in New Zealand, with apologies, I'm not sure what they are. If you're the boss of one of the commercial channels, your goal is to get as many people as possible to watch your news. Why? Because you can sell ads for more. And the reality is that bad news sells. And so for me, I don't watch the news. It doesn't mean that I'm putting my head in the sand, but, look at a reliable website, whether it's the ABC or some kind of, by all means, stay up to date, the Dental Association, whatever. But what are you filling your head with all day long? This is a book I'm reading at the moment from Naomi Simpson. She's the founder of Red Balloon and on Shark Tank in Australia. She says she doesn't watch the news. And for your office, if the office is still open, then, moderate your discussions in the office. We have a rule in our team. We don't talk about the C word except to the extent that it impacts us operationally. A man or a woman is what they think about all day long. All right, so this is a study from the US Department of Health and Human Services, and it looks at the psychology of a crisis. During that time, we don't hear, we don't remember as well. This is a physiological reaction. We hold on to our current beliefs. Now, you may be one of the people who feels like you're not in a crisis, in which case that's totally fine, but be aware for some of your team, they may feel like they're in a crisis. We look for extra information and opinions, and we believe the first message. So what that means, if you're a leader, if you're on this, and in a sense, all of us can be leaders in our workplace, then what that means is you've got to communicate with simplicity, because if people are in a crisis, they don't hear or remember as well. So keep the messages simple. We hold on to our current beliefs, which means we've got to communicate with credibility. What are your reference points for what you're getting people to do? We're looking for extra information, opinions. We can be sitting there on our mobile phones going, refresh, 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 finding out the latest piece of bad news. But for you, your job is to communicate with consistency so that the message gets through. And then we believe the first message. All of this is what the empirical data shows happens for people who believe they're in a crisis. And so velocity, speed, how quickly are we communicating? Now, I want to tell you, I discovered this information pretty early on, and this is our experience with it, because I'm very aware of this. So one of the things that we've done is set a daily business booster email to our clients. That's the spot there, get daily business booster tips. Now, I started that about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Here's some of the feedback we've had from people. Thank you for your 30-day presentations. I just wanted to let you know that I, for one, think you're doing a great job. Wonderful work. Dr. Trevor from New South Wales. No, Dr. Trevor. It's not Trevor Martin who sent that. This is very helpful information for running our business in this hard time. That was from Dr. Henry in Queensland. And then I really like these short videos and think they're great. Dr. Virginia from Victoria. I'm sorry there aren't any Kiwis in there. If you want to receive these daily emails from me, it's a short video every day to encourage you, to give you practical stuff. If you go to anguspryor.com/blog, they will come out every day. My commitment is to do this every day until we get to the end of this. Now, to give you an idea, this is costing me literally thousands of dollars a month to do this, but I recognise this is an important time to be communicating in this method. And here's our website traffic since we started doing this. We've had something like a 5-time return on this, so this is really important. All right, so that's the psychology of crisis. Remember, all of this stuff is underpinning what we do when we reopen. We don't want to tank. And for you, if you're in a crisis mode, then your ability to execute when you reopen is going to be heavily impacted. What I'm going to get you to do now, if you don't mind, please, just give me a little bit of feedback. Just type into the chat one thing that you picked up from that section. other than Angus missed the button. If you wouldn't mind, just type in one thing that you picked up from that section under the psychology of crisis. That'll really help me. Let's have a look at the feedback. That's great. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate the feedback. Seeing that coming through. Communication should be more, not less, 100%. Keep calm, continue to engage staff and patients. Get the Miracle Morning book, absolutely. Simplicity, exercise. Make your bed every morning, sets your day. That is so true. Stay positive, don't panic. Use time to get good routines. Morning routine, good on you. Thanks for your feedback, guys. All right, let's keep moving on. Strategies for surviving and thriving. Admiral James Stockdale. Confession, I called him a general. He's not a general, he's an admiral. I now know the difference. So this guy was held in a prisoner of war camp for 7.5 years. He was tortured many times during that time and his leg was broken twice. He led a resistance among the other soldiers that were arrested, and he was placed in solitary for extending periods. But really key lessons about surviving tough times. Now, I've mentioned that because he was mentioned in a book, Good to Great by Jim Collins. Can you just type into the chat window? Don't listen to the news all the time. Good one, Sue. Just type into the window. I'll put a Y or an N if you've ever read this book, Good to Great. Earlier this week, okay, some yes, some no. Yeah. Brilliant, brilliant book. It looks like a few more no's than yeses. Now, one of the videos that I made this week was 7 books to read during this time. The only reason I didn't put this book in there is because my copy of this book's at the office and I couldn't show it in front of the camera. So Jim Collins, this is a book based on empirical research for what are the, as it says, why some companies make the leap and others don't. How do businesses go from good to great? And in the context of writing this book, he actually interviewed Admiral Stockdale and he coined the term the Stockdale paradox. And one of the things that they looked at, now just let's set the scene. Admiral Stockdale was a prisoner of war for 7.5 years. And so Jim Collins interviewed about that because he wanted to understand about optimism and pessimism and a whole bunch of things. Here's the interesting thing. This is what they found. Which soldiers didn't survive during that time? And in fact, it was anybody that was overly optimistic and anyone that was overly pessimistic. One of his comments about the optimists, he said, is that what they go, oh, well, this thing's going to be over next week, we'll be fine. And then it didn't happen. Oh, this thing's going to be over next month, and it didn't happen. And what happens is they lose hope because they're too optimistic. On the other hand, if you're too pessimistic about this, then you've kind of got no hope anyway. And so sitting in the middle seems to be the way to do it. This is a fascinating quote, and this is where the Stockdale paradox came from. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. I'm going to read that again, because this applies to us in this moment. We must never confuse faith that we will prevail in the end, and we can never afford to lose the faith, but we need the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. So I've got surviving at that end, I've got thriving at that end. I'm sorry I don't have numbers. That's a 0 on the left and that's a 10 on the right. If you'd be kind enough to type in a number where you think you are at this moment. Are you a 0? Are you down the surviving end? Are you in the thriving end? I don't care what your number is. That's up to you. I'm just trying to get a sense of where you think you are. Okay, that's interesting. So Trevor will make this observation. The fact that these people are on this call, in my estimation, probably means that they've got a more positive association. There's many of you around the middle. Maybe I shouldn't have shown you the Stockdale paradox, but there's quite a few of you on the higher side, and there's a few of you feeling, can I say this? Like you're just in survival mode. That's okay. And then the other one is this question about pessimist and optimist. And there's no right answer here, except that 7.5 years in a prisoner of war camp. And this model of pessimism and optimism has been played out many times. I could quote you dozens of books, particularly from things like war situations, natural disasters, where it's that balance that's important. As we remember, we've got to keep the faith that we're going to win, but we've also got to confront the brutal reality. Now, one of the books that I did include in my video earlier this week about 7 books to read during this time was Managing Oneself. And as I've written, Know Thyself. So this is one of the exercises that Peter Drucker does, that he mentions in this book. And it says, anytime you make a major decision, maybe like now, write down on your calendar in 9 months' time what you think the outcome will be. So on, an Outlook or whatever the case, write down what you think the outcome will be, and then compare what you thought would happen with what did happen. Now, I've had this book for a number of years. I'm pretty sure you can get a free PDF of this book online. It's only a very thin book. It's like 50 pages or something. It takes you, 20 minutes to read it. But I can tell you, as a result of having done this, guess what? I discovered I'm too much of an optimist. There are multiple decisions I've made in the previous years where I wrote down what I thought was going to happen when I entered something new. And then when that thing popped up on my calendar 9 months later, I went, oh crap, because I was very optimistic about it happening and it didn't happen. The key here is that balance. All right, speaking of thriving, surviving and thriving, I've got a freebie for you. I've got a training course that I'm doing. There's one, I think, later today, and there's one tomorrow, which is the Coronavirus Practice Survival Blueprint. 11 critical steps to turn the coronavirus crisis and worldwide recession into practice growth and simultaneously guarantee it doesn't destroy your practice and financial future. Now, may I suggest, register for this now. I'm going to have a drink for a second. If you open up another window and go to anguspryor.com/COVID, this is free. This is my gift to you. What is the difference between this one and what we're doing now? Now is much more about focusing on when you reopen. This Coronavirus Practice Survival Blueprint is much more about right now. So just take a second now. I'm going to have a little drink. Just pop open another window, anguspryor.com/COVID, with special thanks to my sponsor, Monster. I know, I shouldn't be drinking that sort of stuff. anguspryor.com/COVID. That is my gift to you. That's a free webinar. That webinar goes for about 25 minutes. It's much quicker, but it's very sort of practical and action-based. All right. Revisiting your passions and vision. Of the 3 key points in the middle here, this is possibly the most important one of the lot. Why, at a time when we are focusing on not tanking when we reopen, none of us want to do that, why at this time should we be revisiting our vision? The reality is, if we revisit our vision, it reminds us why we exist. Now, that can be on this planet, it can be doing your job, it can be in your business. And it has the capacity to bring the team together for a common purpose. There's a proverb that says, maybe you've heard this before, without a vision, the people perish. And this particular proverb is etched in my head from one experience I had a few years ago. When I moved to Sydney about 7 years ago, I met a bunch of guys who convinced me to go on a long cycle ride with them. This was, I think it was 85 Ks in one day. If you're a cyclist, you probably go, oh, I could do that in 2 hours. I was untrained on a bicycle, but they convinced me, and with a very little training, I went on this ride with them. And we're riding through the southern highlands of Sydney. As the name says, highlands, by inference, a bit up and a bit down. And partway through, the guys that I'm riding with are going, I'm just not sure if we're going the right way. I don't know if we've missed a turn back there. Now, in the middle of that physical exertion, that comment, that was absolutely, soul crushing. I'm kind of at the edge of my capacity. I didn't eat or drink during the first 2 hours of riding. Big mistake. And then they're like, oh, we don't even know if we're going the right way. Absolutely soul-crushing. So without a vision, the people perish. I'll never forget that. Here's a quote from Steve Jobs. If you're working on something exciting that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you through. Let's have a close look at what happened with Apple and see if we can, make that analogy with you revisiting your vision. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there's a bunch of unique opportunities from these businesses that started in, difficult times. Let's have a closer look at Apple. Now, some of you, I realise, you'll notice there are two dates here, 1975 and 2001. Some of you are probably not alive in 1975, but that's okay. I was living in New Zealand in 1975, as a matter of fact. So 1975 onwards, that's when Steve Jobs launched Apple. They had some initial success. They built the Apple I, the Apple II. I remember vividly when I was in high school in the late 80s that, the kids in computing had like an Apple IIe. And the thing that stuck in my mind is most of the kids said, oh, Apple sucks. I thought that was quite interesting. So that was their first go. They did a few printers and minor peripherals. Now, Steve Jobs was sacked in 1983 because he was pretty hard to get on with if you watch any of the movies about his lives. And here's what happened after that. By March 1997, Apple recorded a quarterly loss of $708 million. That was their loss in that quarter. So that's kind of Apple V1. Fast forward to 2001, Steve Jobs rejoins Apple with a new vision, a fresh vision. He's had his time in the wilderness. He had a big failure with another computing company, but then he, what was the thing that he did, the animation company, Pixar, that he launched. Jobs rejoins Apple. Look what happened after his fresh vision. iPod, iTunes, iPhone, iPad, MacBook. From 2001, that point onwards, incredibly productive. And one of the things he was quoted as saying during that time is he was focused intently on not just what to do, but what not to do. In 2018, Apple was valued at $1 trillion and the highest valued public company in the world. Can you see the impact of having a fresh vision? Now, of course, we're sitting here watching this. You work at a dental practice, you're an owner, you're thinking, yeah, well, this is all marvellous, Angus, but clearly I'm not in Apple's league. But the same message can apply. So this is the question I want you to think about. Why did you get into dentistry? Now, I know not everybody on this call is a dentist, but why did you get into dentistry? And the other question is, when you set up your practice, what did you hope to achieve? Now, for some of you, this is fairly recent. For some of you, and I've looked through the list, I've seen some of the names here. I know some of you guys have been doing dentistry for decades. Why did you get into it? And when you set up your practice, what did you hope to achieve? This is a quote from German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. He or she who has a why can endure any how. So, it may seem as though I'm spending a lot of time on stuff that maybe, come on, Angus, I want tactics and so on. Like me on that bicycle, riding through the hills, at my wit's end, the vision is the thing that keeps you pedaling in tough times. Helping dentists win in business and life. It's something I've mentioned a few times. For us, we recognise that part of our vision is about helping dentists win in life, which is why charity is a really important part for us. One of the things about happiness is focusing on something bigger than yourself. Often when we're unhappy, we're all focusing on us. So there's a couple of times we're able to donate, doing charities and live events, indeed, with Guns for that one as well. Here's another thing that can happen from vision. Now, I'm not going to show you the actual video, but on the left there is an extract from a video that I made in April 2018. That's 2 years ago. And part of the transcript of that video says, we've won numerous awards for our visionary, innovative work. I can tell you at the time that I made that video, that was not on the horizon, that didn't look in any way possible. Let's fast forward 2 years' time. Here's our reality. On Thursday last week, we were announced as the winner of the Byte Magazine Marketing Award by the Australian Dental Industry Association. And the reason that happened is because that being an award-winning agency was part of the vision for the business. Now, I don't know if you know, but the process for getting one of these awards is not easy. I mean, we had to, I had to engage people specifically for that. We spent weeks and months as an organisation getting our ducks in a row so we could even apply. I'm incredibly proud of the award, but it only happened because part of my vision was that we would be an award-winning agency. You can see why vision is so important. So one of the things for you to do, and I absolutely want you to be taking notes for this, this is something that you do in a quiet place by yourself, is revisiting your why. Like, what makes you come alive? What excites you? What are your innate strengths? What are the things that people see in you and they go, oh my goodness, you know, this guy can just, you know, sort of do that without even thinking about it. Where do you add the greatest value? And then the fourth question is, how will you measure your life? And if this seems all a bit philosophical, I mean, this stuff is so important. Tony Robbins talks about the rocking chair test. Anytime you're making a big decision, imagine yourself in your 90s sitting on a rocking chair on the porch, looking back at that decision saying, is that something that I'm grateful for, or is that something that I regret not doing? Oprah Winfrey, there's no greater gift than to honour your life's calling. It's why you were born and how you become truly alive. So if I'm giving this a lot of emphasis, is because I think this is really important. The better you can understand this, the better you go. Now is the time to revisit your why, because it guides everything you do when you reopen. I don't want you to think of this as being, come on, Angus, I just want tactics. This underpins everything else you do. Are you going to have an Apple-like transformation during this time, or is it a subtle, you know, course correction? You can figure out what your why is. You can figure out what your mission is. This will directly impact your reopening. All right, well, that's the main part of it. Now we're going to go to Q&A. There's a queue. I can see there's already some questions there. What I'm going to do is, just as a reminder, by the way, if you haven't registered for this, you're welcome to do that at this time. I'm going to bring Trevor back in. Hopefully I can do this. There we are. That's good. Oh, okay. It looks like many of these questions are possibly typed in the wrong spot. Yeah, impossible to be grateful and unhappy, ain't that the truth? All right, so we're going to open this to Q&A. Look, you can, frankly, you can type them into Q&A or you can type them into the chat. I don't mind which way you want to do that. What I'll do is I'm going to stop sharing. And well, I'll tell you what I'll get you to do. While you're thinking about your questions, again, I'm going to get you to type into the chat, what's one thing that you picked up from today that you can do? What's one thing that you can do that you can take action now on? Let me just grab a drink and then I'll type that into the chat if you don't mind. Yep. Revisit your vision. Refine my mission and my vision. Get crystal clear on it. Absolutely. Reaffirming and documenting my values and business values. Absolutely. My why and my mission. I probably shouldn't have said anything because I don't want to influence the people who are thinking, you know, what they're going to type in. Doing most of it, but wanting to refine my current course. Absolutely. All right, let me get, putting major decisions taken now in my diary in 9 months. I'll tell you, David, it can be a bit scary. How I choose to behave, what I believe during this time. Review, practice, mission. The difference between surviving and thriving. Yeah, absolutely. Keep going, guys. This is terrific. I really appreciate this. I'll just give you another sec to type those in and then let's see if we've got some Q&A coming through. All right, I'll stop sharing. Comes back to me. Trevor, there you are. Sound check, Trevor.
Yes, I'm all on here, I'm sure.
That's good. All right. Maintain staff involvement. Yeah, this is terrific. Thank you for your feedback, everyone. All right, well, that's the sort of end of the main presentation. Rob wants to know, will the webinar be recorded? It is being recorded. To be honest with you, we don't announce that beforehand for a couple of reasons. You know, I said at the start of this about taking action now, and what I find is if people go, oh, well, it's recorded, then I can just turn up, then they're far less likely to take action. I mean, at the end of the day, information is just like blah, blah, blah. We're in a world which is filled with information. Information is not the key. The key is applied. You know, what do you actually do as a result of this? All right, thank you for the comments, everyone. Q&A, ask us anything. So Rob's just asked whether the later webinar, that depends. I must admit this one was actually maxed out. We had more registrants than we had spots. We'll see what happens next time. My encouragement to you, if you possibly can, is to come live. I'm not going to make any promises about the recordings. If we max out, I'll record it. Okay, so we've got a question, how do we sign up for your daily emails? I guess I can put that into the chat, anguspryor.com/blog, and you'll see that there's a spot there where there's two buttons. Just go for the bottom one, and we'll be sending those to you every day. What other questions? How could a man of Trevor's maturity be so handsome? I don't know. That's one that I struggle with myself. Is the next webinar next Thursday at the same time? Yes, it is. And I can tell you, let's do that. Goodness, let me find that. I've actually shut down that window. So today was the sort of the foundation. For next Thursday, it's much more about the tactics, exactly how to do. It's next Thursday is around your team, around some stuff you can do with your clients. It's much more sort of tactical stuff. Trevor, have you got any questions while people are typing them in?
Angus, one of the things that I'm feeling from a Gunz Dental perspective is it seems that we need to, and what I'm encouraging my team to do is to run as hard as they can at the current time in order to be fit when we get out the other side. And some days that can feel like you're running at a brick wall because there's no revenue coming in. There's no, and it's the same for our customers, of course, as well. There's no patients to be seen, so therefore we're not getting any revenue. So you know that being true to your visions, I think, is very important. We remind the team about our vision. Any thoughts about how to really drive that? Get up every morning and want to keep running.
Well, look, as I mentioned, for me personally, that miracle morning routine is, I would honestly say it's changed my life in the last 18 months. So just a reminder of those 6 steps. I mean, I did it this morning. Like, I've done it every day. The first thing I do is gratitude. And I say in my mind, I finish this sentence repeatedly. I'm so grateful for, I'm so grateful for. And, you know, often we want to go, oh, I'm so grateful that I made $1 million and that I've got a beautiful house or whatever. But be grateful for the simple stuff. I mean, I'm so grateful that I turned on the tap and that there was fresh, clean water out the other side, because half the population on the planet doesn't have that. So that's the first step. The second step is around affirmations, and it's just saying stuff out loud about yourself. And it's things that are in your control, not, you know, I am suddenly beautiful and 10 foot tall, etc. Well, you can't control that, but you can say stuff like, you know, my inner world is creating my outer world, and I'm closely observing my thoughts and embracing only those that empower me. That's completely within my control. The next part is visualization. All good athletes do this, don't they, Trevor? You know, I know you're a bit of a rugby man. I'm not sure what you were thinking there, but anyway, that'll appeal to the New Zealanders on the call. I mean, have you ever watched a guy, you know, whether it's league or union or AFL or even soccer, before they take that shot, you know, let's say it's a penalty or a conversion or whatever, they go back and they pause. And what they're doing in that moment is they're visualizing themselves. It's a mental rehearsal to say, I'm kicking this through the goal. And you can do the same thing. I imagine today, you know, the meeting I had with my team, the meeting I had with my coach, this thing, mentally rehearsing all of that stuff going well. When you turn up, it feels like you've already been there. The fourth part is journaling, which is just writing down I'm so grateful for, I'm so proud of, and I'm absolutely committed to. Part 5 is reading a book. This is the book that I'm reading at the moment. I saw Naomi, for those guys of you in Australia. I met her at the Clear Aligner Society conference earlier this year. And then part 6 is exercise. I mean, if you're super busy, you can do that whole thing in 6 minutes. If you're less busy, like I was this morning, I did 3 minutes or 4 minutes on each bit. And for me, it's you set the trajectory for the day. Are you setting that kind of trajectory, or do you start with no plan and the first thing you do is grab your phone and look at emails? And frankly, I would say don't look at emails for the first hour of the day because it's somebody else's agenda. And you know, get yourself prepared for the day and then off you go. So that would be my thesis on that topic, Trevor.
Thank you.
All right, let's see if we've got any other questions coming through. No, that seems... How do you do all that and exercise in 6 minutes? Okay, so I can tell you my 1 minute exercise is I plank. I mean, planking, you know, my physio tells me that's a very good thing to do. So what I do is I look at my bank accounts while I'm planking. And as my eyesight gets worse, I actually can't see my phone when I'm lying there on my forearm. So I have to sort of hold this away. Yeah, I mean, what can you do? What can you do for 1 minute's exercise? You know, squat for 1 minute or something. I just take the view, let's lower the bar. Let's make it easy to comply, you know. All right, any other thoughts? Ooh, I think there's more questions there coming through. No, that's fine. Well, look, the main thing for all of you, we will be sending you an email tomorrow. Plank and do mountain climbing. Thank you, Rosalind. Yes, absolutely. Trevor, we want to see you doing more mountain climbing on your 1 minute of exercise. We will be sending you an email tomorrow about the webinar, same time, same place next week. Today was about setting the foundation. Next week, we're going to get much more into the, you know, the real practical stuff that you can do, or the tactics and so on. Yvonne says, biking. Oh, this is good. We've struck a chord with exercise. Carenza, you can do one salute to the sun, yoga pose. Carenza, you might need to send in a photo for that one. I'm sure I can Google it and find out what that is, but absolutely, like for 1 minute. All I'll say is once you start doing this, by the way, you'll discover pretty quickly that you can do it in 1 minute, but it's actually more fun if you can do a bit longer. I mean, are you really telling me you couldn't spend 6 minutes to set up your day? Get up 6 minutes earlier. I find mostly I like doing it in 24 minutes, but, you know, whatever. Final thoughts, Trevor?
Angus, just thank you very much for today. I'm looking forward to kicking this off again next Thursday at 1 o'clock. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. We hope that you found it useful. If you've got any thoughts about how we can make it better next time, please don't hesitate to flick us an email. You can contact Angus directly, myself, or go onto the Goods Dental webpage and contact us and leave us a message. Happy to take on that feedback. So I hope you found today useful. I certainly am looking forward to my 6 minutes tomorrow morning, Angus.
Excellent. And we're going to hold you accountable, Trevor. We're going to ask you in a week's time if you've been doing the 6 minutes.
Excellent. All right. See you next week.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.